sponsor session number 201, Socializing Your Old Lotus Notes Applications. My name is Scott Hooks. I'm General Manager of Services for Group Business Software, or GPS. You might have seen our logo around the conference in different places. With me is my colleague Stefan Brzezinski. He is the product manager for our App Builder solution, which was the finalist in the CTO Innovation Award this year, and providing technical support, my colleague Brad Balasadis. So our goal today is obviously, as the title says, to help you understand how you can socialize your existing Lotus Notes client applications. So first we're going to start with why social is important, and then demos. Demos. So first of all, let's talk. Why modernize your applications? How many of you still use a computer that looks like this? Hopefully none of you, right? And if you did, you probably wouldn't feel all that good about doing your job, right? So the reality is that technology, applications, they evolve over time, right? Hopefully none of you are still using applications like this, but there's still a few out there. Think about how an application like this makes you feel. I've talked to a number of users who have applications like this that they're still using today, and the general feeling is that they must be performing something that's pretty important to the business, but they're not very intuitive. They typically require understanding of specialized commands to use. So applications grow, modernize, and this is important to the usability of the application. Right? We finally move through graphical user interfaces. Right? But still, I think most of you would agree, if you were using an application that looked like this, if this is still a version of Windows you were using, you would feel pretty bad about using it, right? So we went through a stage of kind of graphical user interfaces. Now we expect interfaces that look more like this, more like portals with multiple sources of information, visual articulation of the information that's being provided back to you. Same thing with mobile devices, right? Some of you might remember the days when that was the latest and greatest in technology, right? And there's an evolution with our hardware as well. So moved into phones like this. But again, think about if you came in and on day one working for a company, this was the phone they issued to you. It wasn't that many years ago this was the case. But now, this would be considered archaic. Now think about how you would feel if you come to a company and this is the phone you're issuing. Or better yet, if you work for a great company, that's the phone you're issuing, right? That makes you feel really good about the company that you work for, your user experience, their level of modernization. So that's the fundamental reason that we are talking to so many of our customers about modernizing their application. It's keeping up and creating a better user experience. So why specifically social? Social is the new paradigm for communication, and it's the fastest emerging one in the history of civilization. So communication started with the Pony Express, right? I think we can all agree this is somewhat like that green screen application, right? It was appropriate at the time, but we moved past it. So we moved to, we had the postal service. That was the next great invention in communication. Then in telephone systems where we had operators manually switching lines. We, of course, had our meetings. Everyone traveled to the same place so that they could actually talk to each other, see each other face to face. The phones became more modern. We got email. I don't know if any of you remember Profs. This was the first email system I ever used. And this was a revolution in communication. Email was amazing. Only managers were able to use it. And then it started to extend out and create models for managing documents. Then we had You've Got Mail, right? This expansion of the email space into the consumer space. This was ultra modern at the time. And anyone recognize what version of Notes that is? 4.6, right? So we had Notes, and we were using email more and more in our business communications. We expanded into collaboration, right? It wasn't just about the email anymore, but it was about sharing information with each other and collaborating on documents and things. The applications here continued to modernize. So we started to get the sidebar, for example, in Lotus Notes, and better organization, better visualization of the data. We started getting instant messaging, right? We can chat with our friends in real time. And we extended out into mobile devices. Here we go. So mobile devices. see Kelly Harden here, for example. She's logged into instant messaging, but it's from her cell phone. That wasn't good enough. We started to do web meetings, right? So now we don't have to travel and be face-to-face anymore. We can share our screens and interact with each other as if we were together. Now we can start phone calls from our instant messaging, right? So maybe some of you aren't at this point yet, but it's definitely starting to catch on. We're using more and more tools that enable us to communicate using our computer instead of our phones, for example, or our mobile phones. We have video communication, so we can now see each other when we talk. This is a fantastic evolution, and now we can even have video chat from our mobile phone devices, right? So we've all kind of seen this, and we're all sort of adapting it at our own pace. But now we're moving into this concept of circles and networks and interacting with people on a whole new level. And so, just like the postal service was revolutionary at some time, the phone was revolutionary, instant messaging, email, collaboration, all of that was crazy talk at some point, but now it's the de facto standard. Right? It's old stuff. So communication will go social. It's just a matter of time. So you have to decide for your businesses where you want to be on that adoption curve, because eventually it will move towards social and beyond. Who knows what's next? So I think in terms of how I interact with people today. So for my friends and family, I tend to connect with them on Facebook. For my professional network, I use LinkedIn. For my internal business talks, I use Connections, same time, Skype. For sharing information, I use Dropbox, I use Quicker, I use SlideShare to share it and retrieve presentations. For news and updates of kind of thought leaders, I subscribe to their blogs. I connected them on Google+, I might follow them on Twitter. For information that I want to discover, we've got Delicious, we've got StumbleUpon. For catching up with people at conferences and keep track of where people are, I use Foursquare, I use TripIt. For education and sharing rich concepts that really need video, of course, I use YouTube. If I'm adding a contact or doing contact management, nowadays I'm doing it from my iPhone. I'm doing it a lot less in applications like CRM solutions. I use Evernote, for example, because that has mobile presence and social elements to it that my CRM system that I have internally doesn't have. And of course, I still use Lotus Notes. I actually use Lotus Notes as the center of all of these social activities. So when someone posts a comment on Facebook or responds to me on Twitter or tries to connect to me on LinkedIn, I'm getting email notifications. So email has become my central gathering point for all of this social activity that I'm experiencing. But it's still kind of up to each individual to determine how they're going to process all of this social information that's coming at us from all these different directions. All right, done with time. So really, what we want to talk about is how we can take these applications that your users are still using today in a business context and take advantage of this evolution of communication, this movement towards social interaction, and make it available to users without them having to figure out all this themselves. So the first demo I want to do is how you could take a typical notes application, a document library, and make it more social. Several different approaches we'll talk about today. But one is that you can take kind of this individual approach. We've got this great sidebar in Notes 8.5 that allows you to have widgets that you can install yourself, and a lot of them are social widgets. So you can start to expose social communication in what we call your peripheral vision. So without leaving the context of my traditional notes application, I now can go connect to my connections activities, for example, right? Which are kind of like collaborative to-dos that are available in IBM Connections. And simply by actually turning on this plugin, which is installed with the Lotus Notes client, I also automatically get some improvements to my same time contacts. Right? I think most of us who use a modern version of the Lotus Notes client are probably using same time for instant messaging, but how can we make that more social? Well, if you've got IBM Connections, which, by the way, there is an entitlement to the files and profiles component if you're current on your Lotus Notes maintenance, then by simply hovering over a person's name, in same time, I now get contact information that allows me to connect with them via email or their phone number and find out contact information, and I can reach out to them directly from same time. Now you can also, somehow this preference got turned off, go into your same time contact list, and you've got this option for show server community icons beneath contacts. So if I turn that option on, and then I hover over a person's name, then now, because I've got connections installed in my environment, and because I've just gone through the process of logging into connections via that activities sidebar plugin, I've made this much more social. Live demos. So now this business card links me into all of this person's social activities. Right? And this is something that you can do without anything other than simply activating the activities plugin and logging into your connections instance, and instantly then your buddies become your social connections for your internal interactions. There are also a variety of other social elements available in the Lotus Notes sidebar. So for example, the feeds allow you to subscribe to RSS feeds so that you can see your friend's blog activity, for example. Anything that's RSS enabled, you can actually subscribe to specific content in IBM connections using these feeds, so that makes it more social. And then there are a variety of solutions that are available from other vendors, like there's plugged in for LinkedIn that's been available for a number of years. And actually, the reason I'm bringing this one up is because when LinkedIn changed their API, they broke this. This plugin doesn't really work anymore. I think someone's published a workaround, but it's complicated. So what we're going to do is show you how to mitigate that by making the app itself actually social. Mikkel Heidelberg has a Twit Notes that allows you to integrate your Twitter stream into the Lotus Notes sidebar. Business partner ISW gives you the ability to aggregate multiple social streams. So for example, here I have my Facebook stream and my connection stream all into one live feed. And again, these are all free. So the way that these are installed is by simply really just dragging and dropping them into your widgets sidebar and rebooting the Notes client. And then they're there. Then you sign in, you give your credentials, it keeps you track of your credentials, and then you have now sort of made your applications more social because you've provided the tools to expose these social communications techniques next to your applications. But there are a few challenges with this approach, right? And unless you have a very good widget management solution or procedure, this kind of is one user at a time. It's difficult to push these down. And they're not truly integrated with the applications themselves. So let's talk about how we can actually make the applications more social. All right, so we'll do this in two parts. First, the quick and easy part. So, actually, I'll switch back to Notes. So here is a very simple Lotus Notes database that I personally put together, so you know it's simple. That just basically allows me to track for the GBS organization what our global consulting capabilities are. Right? So it's kind of a typical Lotus Notes view. It's got your categories, your action, create a new profile, and it tells me I've got 69 worldwide consultants, and I can kind of extend here and list by location, and if I want to go find my location, here are the people that work in the same location as me, and here's my skill profile, and if I collapse my sidebar here to get a little bit better screen real estate, you can see that it's just basically kind of a self-ranking system for a set of skills. So that's a simple Lotus Notes application. I'll give it to you for free if you want it. It was built for this demo. And the reason is to say that we had a need, first of all, to web enable this application. Web enabling your applications is the gateway to making them more social. If you think about the APIs that all of these various social networks are providing to allow you to consume these status feeds and activity feeds, they're all based on some sort of web standard. So moving the application to the web is the foundation for making them more social. Now, I am not a great web developer personally. So what I did was I used our GBS transformer tool, which some of you may have heard of, that automates a lot of the conversion of the simpler Notes applications to XPages applications. So you can see here I've got a very similar experience, and that's kind of the whole point, is that anyone who could use the previous application can now use this one. But I've also kind of modernized it. I've given it a more modern look, but it works the same. And I didn't have to do much other than just running it through our transformer tool and then styling it a little bit, because it is a very simple database. So I can simply double click on this, on my profile here. I think I'm scrolled off screen here, haven't I? Bear with me while I resize the window. There we go. So now I have this same skills profile in the web, but you can see I've got the LinkedIn profile exposed here, and so I can simply click on that LinkedIn link, and it pulls up my social profile. So that's sort of providing a social gateway. It's taking me outside the context of the application, and it's linking me to the actual LinkedIn profile, and so I can just do simple things like putting URLs into applications, whether it's from the data or from the design of the application, and start exposing some of these social elements without really writing any kind of code. So that's the easy way. Let's see. So now let's talk about what if we were to actually try to improve the application and really make it sing social. So I'll show you an example of another Notes database that we all recognize. So back to our original document library. I think everybody in here knows the Lotus Notes document library. And you probably still have some within your organization, and they're serving a valuable purpose. But I think you'd all agree it's not a very modern experience. So, what if we took this concept of the document library and, using the capabilities that XPages give us, decided to make it much more social? So what we've done here, this is actually the same database. And we've created some XPages interfaces and custom controls that make it more modern. And we've integrated some social controls. So now, we have our typical Lotus Notes document here, which is kind of, in a Lotus Notes view, you've got your one-row model for exposing data and columns. And there are a few tricks that all of you probably have come up with over the years that enable you to get multiple rows, but you're limited in your ability to really control this interface. So what if we took that experience and, using an XPage, we really tweaked the heck out of it? So here's that same exact view. But you can see I've now gone into the document itself and pulled out some information, and I'm displaying it as more of an on-screen experience, so I don't actually have to double-click to open the document to see what's inside of it. Right? I've exposed much more information in multiple rows, and I've actually taken those comments that were displayed in the view, and I've made them interactive here. Right? Again, multiple rows. And look at this. Without me having to open a document and click respond, I think you're all familiar with this model, so I don't have to show it in Notes. I can actually comment right here in line, like I would on Facebook. Right? So if I make a comment and I click post, and I wait for the internet, right? Now that comment is added in line, or would be if it refreshed the screen. Now you can really tell that I built this down. Right? And that, and of course, in the Lotus Notes database, that would get added as a response document. Right? So how did we do this? How do we make this application more modern? Well, let's flip to designer here. So this is really a trick. If you haven't gotten into X pages, then I strongly encourage you to do so. But I'm not going to deep dive on X pages here either. Right? This is just to show you some examples. So this is kind of a standard view control that you would implement in X pages. And this is a column within that view. And that column returns the values for that column that are in the corresponding Lotusphere. But what we've done here is instead of returning a typical value, we've changed the data to return nothing. And so what that allows us to do is to now take control of that document that was returned, and instead of just returning the column value, we can actually manipulate all of the data that's coming back. So we've created a panel here, which is kind of the standard X pages thing, and we're going into that document and we're getting the information out of it. So we're grabbing the person's name and the categories and the title of the document, and we're just telling it to output that instead of the view column. So
if I could interject.
Please do.
We do this way because the view panel actually, it automatically gives you a handle to every document that's going to show up in the view. So it's a simple way to get that collection. So we're cutting off the content. We're not saying to just return what's in one column of that view, but at the same time, we still have a handle to that document so that we can get anything off of it that we want, and we can rearrange the content in the way that we want to display it.
Right, so here we've created a table. We've got our standard HTML kind of table tags here. It's not standard HTML, those are tags. But so for example, here's our JavaScript. This document dot get document, get item by string, categories. Okay, so categories on the underlying notes form is a multi-value field. So now what we're doing is we are taking all those values and we put them inside an X pages repeat control. Let's scroll up a little bit. Again, I don't want to do a technical deep dive, so I'm just going to move down further. So if you're not familiar with repeat controls give you the ability to kind of specify what to do with a set of things. A little bit of that. There you go. Okay, so here we go. Code demos are done. But here's our repeat control. And this is basically telling us for our category data, simply repeat this notion of putting out the data. Now, some of you are probably thinking, well, why would you use a repeat control, right? You could just display the multiple values, just like you would in Lotus Notes, right? You've got an option in a Lotus Notes view to display each value on a separate line. The reason we're doing this in a repeat control is that by intercepting this data, we're now able to do some really cool stuff with it. So I didn't actually click. I just hovered over one of these categories. I hovered over the category Lotusphere. And up pops a box that shows me online presence awareness for Lotusphere. So it's instantly giving me the Google search results for the term Lotusphere. And I can click these links and interact with them. I can do a Twitter search, right? And I'm not leaving the context of the application. So if I want to know more about this Lotusphere thing that everyone's talking about, that this document's related to, then I now have all these social gateways into it. And I'm going to show you how we did it. Don't worry. Right? And so, because I'm using a repeat control, it's actually the same piece of code that's being called, and it's just being applied to the specific keyword data that's coming back. So if I hover over connections, now I get all those same social results for connections. So let's take a look at how we did that. So that repeat control links to a custom control called the keyword custom control, or keyword X page. This is the X page implementation of that custom control. So this is the design. I apologize, when I practiced this demo, I had a lot more screen real estate. So this is that form, for lack of a better term, that popped up. So right here. That's what we're looking at. Here's the visual representation of that as an X page. And so you can see here are my tabs to Google, my tab to Twitter, my tab to LinkedIn, And then for each one of those, I have a little widget. Okay, so how did I build that widget? So here is the widget. As is often the case when you're building X pages, it doesn't look like much visually, but there is a lot of source behind it. So all we did was read the Twitter API guide. And I'm not going to go into all that. You guys can all go figure that out yourselves. Or read Google's API, or read LinkedIn's API to determine how do I consume a particular type of social feed. In this case, a standard Google search, or a standard Twitter keyword search. And all of that is right here. I'm not going to explain that code because that's just following Twitter's published API for how you do it. And so that widget is applied back to our repeat controller, where we pass in each keyword, and then we expose it via the probably the on-hover JavaScript. I'm not exactly sure how we did the hover there.
Right, and so what this is we've got a dialog box that pops up, and again, like you saw, the design doesn't really look anything like this, but we have a series of iframes in there that we're loading other X pages. So it kind of keeps the content isolated, but lets us organize it, kind of dynamically on the screen, and that's how we can kind of refresh it and rebuild it, for each keyword that's in the list.
So what we're doing here is we're mining these social networks, all of these feeds that exist within the social networks, for information that's relevant to the information that's in our Lotus Notes document, multiplying the value of the application. Let's really make it social, right? So here we have person's name, Chris Tui. Some of you may know Chris Tui. He's one of my engineers. So now I hover over Chris Tui, I get a similar experience. Right? This time it's pulled in his picture, his email address, but I also have access to his latest tweets, to his connections profile, where I can link to all of his various information like I did in Lotus Notes, to his LinkedIn profile. I like the tweets, they're my favorite. I was kind of hoping he didn't put anything dangerous up there. but so now anywhere in the Lotus Notes application that I see a person's name, I can simply apply this card and this feed to and expose their social data. Built it once, and applied it to every single one of my applications, making them more social. So how did we do that?
And it was designed in such a way that all we have to do is pass a name into the control. So it's a very simple architecture. You just drop a tag in there for custom control, pass a name into it, and then you can reuse it anywhere you've got a name in your system.
So what's the keyword to find that, Brad? It's below the categories, right?
The CC underscore social part.
Right. So we took this same notion of capturing the data, and we built this little custom control, the social card, right? So this is the design view of that kind of tagged interface. And we pull in the profile picture actually from the profile that we store for this person in Lotus Notes. So for example, if I did the famous Control-Shift go to and access my hidden views, I promised her when I share some nuggets of information. So here's my profile document. Actually, let's show Chris's. So we're storing this data and information about Chris Tui, and we have an attachment that shows his picture. And so what we're doing is we are now pulling that information in here and exposing it without doing a screenshot of the image, for example, by simply going and retrieving that. But we have these little widgets that expose the Twitter and LinkedIn, for example. So really all that is, for those of you that do a little bit of web development, is an iframe. And we give it a class and an ID. And the source is simply a call out to this little Twitter user feed widget.
Which is another X page that we have in the application.
Right. So we have an X page called Twitter user feed. And again, this isn't complicated. This is just us reading how Twitter says we can consume a user's information according to their API documentation and putting it in here. So we're making a call out to Twitter, using the information from the Lotus Notes application. Right? So without getting in depth on the code, each of you could go figure out how to do this on your own, I think, relatively easily. All right, so now, what if we wanted to say, no, I don't want to take that old application and try to deal with all the code that it's got. What if I want to build an application that's social from the ground up? Because it's a relatively simple or even complex model, but it can benefit from re-engineering. That's where the GBS app builder comes in.
Thanks, Scott. So, as Scott mentioned, my name is Stefan Pierzowski. I am the product manager for App Builder. And before I jump into the demo, what I do want to do is provide some context into what App Builder is. And for the most part, it essentially allows for business users, I guess essentially all users within the organization, to be able to create social business applications through our ability to kind of, I guess, bridge the gap between IBM's Connections API and the social features that they offer and X-Page development. So just an overview of some of the features that we have within App Builder. We allow, it is X-Page development. You are creating X-Page applications using our drag and drop UI. We are also encapsulating the extension library controls so that you can just natively just drag those controls onto our canvas and create those applications. We have embedded a workflow designer so you can create document workflows, behavior, form behaviors as well, and you can do all that graphically. We've added templates to the app builder. So as you're creating content, right, similar to custom controls, you can take that content and store it. So when you're creating new applications, other users or other developers or business users are creating applications, you can just reuse that content so you don't have to redo all the work that you've done before. And application deployment. The application deployment has actually been automated for the user so that they can focus on those business processes, on the forms that you need to create, rather than how do I actually deploy an application to my end users, whether it's internal to the organization or externally. So the way that we've done this is we've incorporated a number of technologies such as IBM Connections. We've tightly integrated App Builder with Connections to consume those Connections API so we can provide content within your forms, within your applications. Right? So as you're creating content within IBM Connections, you're uploading files and blogs and bookmarks. We can consume that within the applications that you've created. We've added, as you saw in the opening general session, there's the embedded experiences that they've been promoting, which is essentially the ability for our application to provide content and data within your iNote Social Edition Connections Next. The data that we're going to look at here in the applications, the examples that we have, are all stored within Notes NSFs. So reporting on this information is going to feel very familiar. And the solution that we have here as well is also deployable on-premise or on the cloud. So you have options on how you want to manage the application itself. So I guess my favorite slide right here is this demo slide where I can switch between screens. And as I'm doing that, actually I just want to point out that the laptop that I'm using here actually is running 3 VMs. And in order to get this solution to run, we have WebSphere for connections, DB2, again, for connections, and just a Domino server. And that's where App Builder actually resides, is the Domino server. So when I switch to our application here, we'll just go full screen. We have our homepage for connections. And what we've done here is integrated into connections in 2 areas. We've added a new tab here, the 4th tab here, build, and we've provided some information information on App Builder itself, and such that it's X-Page development with 0 programming, right? And we've provided a link so that you can access your applications. Let's try that one more time. So that you can access your applications. So we can start designing our applications, create new applications right from within Connections. Additionally, we've created a new menu here. One, you can, again, create your applications. You can build an app, or you can access existing social applications. So in this case, we have GPS Fastworks, and Sales Place, and Vacation Manager applications. In addition to that, we have this expense reporting application. And again, this is just a simple X-Page application that we've created for this demo. And what we have here is a simple layout where we have a number of forms that we've created. So in the top left corner here, we have travel expenses, meal expense, and accommodations. We have the heading, but we can see our information in the view that's embedded on this X-Page application. This view has actually been created via the app builder itself, and it's completely customizable in terms of what data you're showing in this view and on this form itself. To access our records, so we have 3 records, you just click on the first link here, and it brings us right into our form. Again, we're still within Connections. We have access to our menus, but the data that we're looking at is Connections. The Notes NSFs within Connections. The first section here, we're looking at contact information. Just some basic, first name, last name. I'm just going to zoom out a little bit. First name, last name, and email address. And what we've done with the email address is actually added a contact card or business card here that shows my profile image, and if I expand this, links to all the content that I've created within Connections. Right? So I can add one of these controls. If you have approver information, you can have one card for each email address, and it's just the linking, the wiring is quite simple, and we're going to get into that in a moment. The next 2 sections here, we can see I have an expense details area with standard location event information, but we have this approver status, and I'm going to quickly show how that works. This is the embedded experience control that will provide content to your iNote Social Edition, and in a moment we're going to take a look at that. And finally here at the bottom, this is where we're consuming the social information directly within our application. This is information coming from Connections as well, and we're importing that and we're surfacing it right in our application. And we can see as a expense application, we have expense guidelines for files, corporate policy information, human resource documents. So it's using tags in order to pull that information in so it's relevant to the application and form that I'm using. And finally here we have some bookmarks that have been filtered out. And these shows there's some Lotusphere information and sales place. And it should bring that in based on the tags and information that it finds based on my personal profile, the bookmarks that I've created, and just bringing that in. So for the approval, I do want to show you how this works, but unfortunately this exact demo is, I'm going to go back there. This application is disconnected from the internet for sending emails, so I just need to switch to a different server here. It's a very similar demo application where we have the information, and when we open in a document, we'll have similar contact information. And in this case, it's actually already been approved. So what I'm going to do is go back and open another document where we can approve it. And I'm going to open my iNotes, and we're going to take a look at that message and see how it updates. So I'm just going to submit this for approval. It's already been pre-configured for the approver address, and we can see that it's being sent to my Notes.SC account at Lotus.com. So I'm just going to click on Submit for Approval. And it sent it, and it sent an email, and it shows that the status is pending. So if we quickly jump back to, I'm going to just quickly block it. And I'm just going to refresh that. So we can see here that there's been an email that was sent at 11:54. So it's just the email that I sent. I'm just going to double click and open that. And we can see here that it's rendering the content based on the information on the application the form that I just sent. So I can add comments here. So I can say, so he's looking for a accommodation for the dolphin, and I'll say, considering that he's already here, I'll let him, say, hey, Jeff. And I'm just going to go ahead and approve that. He's already down at the showroom floor. I can't really stop him. So, so we just clicked on it. So what's happened is the information's been recorded in my application, but it's being surfaced in the email account, in the email account here. And so whenever I reopen this email, it's going to show me my content that I've added. So now that I've approved it, next time I open this this email, it's still going to show me that I've approved it, and it's going to show what my comment was when I approved it. Going back to the application, if I just reopen that document, we'll see that I approved it, and it says, hey Jeff, have fun on Lotusphere. Right? And that's the embedded experience control working, and that's how easy it is, right? I don't have to jump back into my application. I can do it right from my email. Okay, so simple application. We've gone through, contact information, some social data, and the embedded experience. What I want to do now is show you, how easily we created this application using App Builder. And so to do that, we're just going to navigate to Build an App, and in there we're going to see a list of applications. That match the list in our email here. So we can see there's discussion, fast works from GBS and SalesPlace, and so on. So to edit the application, we click on Expense Reporting. And just navigate to the form that we want to modify. So here we're looking at the accommodations form. And we have an option to open the form builder or the view builder. We're going to do both, time permitting. So form builder, this is our form, and I'm running out of screen size here, but what we can see is the form that we created, we had the first name, last name information, but the social component coming from connections is here as well. And in order to add this information to the form, it's as simple as selecting from our palette. And again, these are our encapsulated extension library controls that we've added to App Builder. And to add a new, say, text box, for example, and just drag that across and just release. By clicking on it, I can edit the properties. And the properties are very simple. For example, if I need to record the year, I just change the label. And that is the extent of our customizations to add to the extension library text box. In order to re-add that connections component, that business card, again, we just take that from App Builder, just drag it across, and look at the properties. App Builder knows that there's only one email field in the application, so it just automatically wires that for you. And by doing so, you don't need to understand, how exactly is this control created? How do I wire it to the content that I want? It's just automatically taken care of for you. The approver control as well. This is the embedded experience control. What we've done is we've taken a standard approval process and wrapped it in such a way where you can customize it by selecting the fields that you want. So you can remove the fields and then re-add them by selecting from anything that's on the application here. So I can click on Add Field. I can click on Add Field. And so any content that I add to my form, I have access to in my approval process for the embedded experience control. Finally, what I do want to show is the social information, the components that I added. The way that I actually added this was I created the content earlier. And so if I just click on the X and just remove it, we can use templates here to quickly re-add it to the application. So I'm just going to click on yes for all the public templates, and I'm going to expand that. And what we see here is just all the templates of content that I've created before. Actually, I can recreate this entire form using these templates, but we're just going to go ahead and add the social component here. And you can see here, it just added the controls down at the bottom for us. When we click on, sorry, I apologize, the screen's running. When we click on the files, we see that there's no connections integration required. It's all done for us in the background because the application's aware of where connections is. And so the wiring to connections to pull that information down through the API has been done for us. And in here, we can sort the data, descending, use tags to filter out data as well. So I can use the company information to pull in the content that I've created, or use maybe the year to only bring in relevant information. And so all the controls that we've added for connections have been simplified in the sense that we can just quickly select the information, filter maybe on multiple tags, and it will search connections for us using the API to bring that in. And so we've done this for, if we take a look at the components, it actually, we've done that for all the major components within connections. And so you can just drag that information across, and it'll filter in the content for you. And I may have just a second to show you how we created the views as well. So the last thing I want to show is that I just added that year field and how to take advantage of that. So if we click on the view builder, we have, this is our view builder canvas. And earlier we saw there was just 4 fields, and with the expense amount. In order to edit existing columns in a view in your X-Page application that you're creating with that app builder, simply click on the column and edit the label, right? Edit the content. If I want to remove the field, I can just remove the content by clicking on that. And to add new fields, so for example, I may want to know the location. I just drag that onto the canvas. And I'll do events as well. And so when we save this, our application is actually going to be aware of, it's going to actually incorporate this in the final resulting application. So when we surface the data within our expense reporting application, then we'll be able to show that to us. There we go. So I'm just going to reopen the application just to show you that when we open the accommodations form, we just quickly change the view. So you can see there it's reflected in the view here. And again, I guess I can reopen the document and the year field's been added. Okay. I think that is for app builder. I think that's the majority.
So hopefully what we've accomplished today is giving you some ideas for how you can make your applications more modern and social. And what we try to do is hit on every possible skill level and approach that you would have. So we want you to understand why it's important to modernize and why social is a valuable thing to consider, and how you can help kind of build the case for it within your organization. We showed a configuring approach for those of you that are more kind of the administrative or very light developers towards using the Lotus Notes plugin. We showed an approach automating the modernization of the application using our GBS transformer solutions. Developing, right, using X pages to actually improve the application's interface by doing some relatively simple techniques that we just exposed you to. And in programming using the APIs that the social networks give you. So again, depending on your skill level, how you want to do it. If you don't want to have to worry about any of that, then we've shown you how you can partner with us or use, once App Builder is released. It's not released yet. It's due out this year. How you can build applications that are social and modern without doing any of that kind of hard work by just using drag and drop inside of your web browser. So with that, I'll open it up for questions. I want to say a special thanks to Brad Valasadis, Shane Burnett here in the front row, Chris Toohey, who couldn't be here. All of them helped us assemble these great demos and applications. Please take down any kind of information, some great resources for finding these kind of social plugins and things are openntf.org and Greenhouse. Greenhouse is a former Lotus site. I do a collaboration solution site where some of these plugins are available. Some of the other ones I showed are linked there as well. There's information in the video demo of the app builder there at that link. And if you want to follow up with us, ask us questions, there's a link for me and for Stefan up there as well. We'd be happy to talk to you during or after the show. And we're on the product showcase if you want to come see us. Any questions? Oh, and one last thing. Please, session evaluations, whether you loved us or hated us, it's very important to the conference to get session evaluations. But I always like to get the good ones. We really appreciate that. Any questions? All right, well, I guess you can come up front if you do have any questions. Other than that, come see us on the showcase.